What do Ryan Leaf, Jamarcus Russell, and Johnny Manziel all have in common? Were each of them first-team all-conference standout players at the highest level of college football? Yes. Were each of them first-round selections in their NFL drafts? Yes. And were each of them drafted to head coaches that never held a winning season? Yes. While these might all be true, I'm sure most of us would better know them as busts.
He was supposed to be the savior of a franchise.
Biggest bust in NFL history, Ryan.
I'm Ram. Welcome to my channel. Shoot me a like, comment, or subscribe if you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. It's that time of year again, where many a young player will be cast off into the sea of forgettables and hastily labeled the unforgiving title of bust. And today, I'm here to make one single point on a hill I'm willing to die on. There is no such thing as a bust in the NFL. The word bust has become as common as any, a routine descriptor in hindsight evaluations of a player's talent, skill, or fit in the NFL. Most synonymous with the highly touted rookie coming off of a larger-than-life college career, set to try and make his mark in the big leagues, soon fizzling out before the show even begins. You can find the word bust in the thesaurus right beside disappointment, underwhelming, and letdown. But it is true that some players do end up disappointing, and some are underwhelming, and some really are a major letdown. So if that's undeniable, how could I then say that busts don't exist in the NFL? Well, first we have to take a look at what the word bust even actually means. The oldest publication I could find of the word, with its current interpretation, comes from 1994. And yet, 30 years later, we still don't have a clearly defined definition of the label. Everyone's seeking to piece together their own understanding of the term, with a lot of malleable standards. I mean, just think about this. A 6-foot-tall, undersized, dual-threat Heisman-winning quarterback, not a bust. A different 6-foot-tall, undersized, dual-threat Heisman-winning quarterback, clearly overdrafted, is a bust. Or what about the #1 overall draft pick quarterback with 0 playoff wins after 9 seasons? After being Rookie of the Year, clearly a bust. But #1 overall draft pick quarterback with 2 playoff wins over 14 seasons, definitely not a bust, right? Okay, we must be missing something. This standard is very unclear. And through the screen, I can hear you now. It's all about the context. And to that, I say yes. That's what we're missing here. One of my biggest problems with the label of bust is that it places all of the onus on the player and removes the responsibility of the dozens of people that had a hand in the outcome. Let's zoom out and view how the trajectory of an NFL player is determined. Most NFL players dominated their peers for years, through high school, into a collegiate program with professional coaches, trainers, and full-time staff. They're then evaluated by dozens of NFL scouts, hundreds of external analysts, and thousands of interested fans across the world. Once measured through combines, pro days, team interviews, questionnaires, and the like, players are selected in the draft by some combination of the team's head coach, general manager, and team owner. Once drafted, players are placed alongside dozens of other teammates assembled by the GM and other coaches. The coach's responsibility is to extract the best talent and outcomes of the squad before him. But yet, after all of those moving parts, we only label the player as the ultimate broken piece in this puzzle. Only one bust. Now let's go back to the 3 players we mentioned beforehand. Johnny Manziel, Jamarcus Russell, Ryan Leaf. 3 of the biggest busts in NFL history. What do they all have in common? Well, for all 3, it's true that the coaches they were drafted to never had a winning record in the NFL, neither before or after they were drafted to the team. And not only were the coaching arrangements dismal, they were also drafted into situations that couldn't have been worse for the outcomes of their career. Ryan Leaf was drafted into a decaying San Diego Chargers team led by the historic Bobby Beathard at GM. In his tenure, the Superchargers were 78 and 96. 3 coaches in the 3 seasons that Ryan Leaf was on the team definitely didn't help his career either. And by then, the stench was on him. Bust. For Jamarcus Russell, it was even worse. The Oakland Raiders had finished bottom of the division in 4 straight years and we're in a stretch of 13 straight losing seasons from 2003 all the way up until 2016. Russell had to deal with a coach that actively hated his guts and had no business coaching in the pros. Plus, a part owner / general manager / professional contrarian well past his prime. All of this cooked up what might have been the worst case scenario for Jamarcus Russell's young career. After 3 years, it was so bad that the Raiders brought a lawsuit against Russell to try and get a refund for his time in Oakland. I wish I was joking. He was cooked. Bust. And the Browns.
Cleveland hasn't worked out very well for a lot of quarterbacks.
Well, the Browns are the Browns. By the way, did you know that the Browns haven't won a division title in 35 years? The longest streak in the entire NFL. The last time they won a division title, Elon Musk was in high school. Manziel was drafted into the worst franchise in NFL history, and his team was assembled by Ray Farmer. Farmer would serve as team's GM for 2 seasons, leading up to the 1-31 stretch of 1-15, followed by the infamous 0-16 season. He would then move into a cozy front office role shortly thereafter. Meanwhile, Johnny Football is the only one labeled bust in this equation. But have no fear. I hear you all the way across the interwebs letting me know that why these guys are busts is because of their character. They're off the field intangibles that we don't see. That it was their laziness or their immorality or their ineptitude that caused them to fail. But to that I ask, of the 25,000 players that have donned an NFL jersey, is it really as simple in so much that the 300 or so players we call busts have just been extraordinarily lazy, inept, or poor workers, while the 300 or so Hall of Famers have all been the most extraordinarily hardworking, diligent, passionate players the league has ever seen? To that, I respectfully disagree. If you think the NFL is a league where only the most diligent, resolute, and focused players succeed, let me introduce to you the Indomitable Three: Michael Vick, Randy Moss, and Brett Favre. 3 unquestionably legendary players dubbed by peers, fans, and former coaches alike to have been lazy, misguided, and of questionable decision making.
1st and 10. Brett again. Are you kidding? Son, what's up?
And yet, 3 players that are at the pinnacle of the sport. Their legacies will live on forever. Some would argue that their physical talents are what separated them from the likes of other busts. And yet, the physical talents of the busts group were just as undeniable. If nothing else, you can't deny that they had talents at least that far surpassed some of the other less gifted athletes. Some would argue that those elite players worked and sacrificed above and beyond all others to be the best in the game. But we know that wasn't always the case, and some say that those Hall of Fame level players just made better decisions than the busts group. But we know that wasn't always true either.
That is a disgusting act by Randy Moss.
So then, what was it? What determines who succeeds and who fails? Which players get to ride off into the sunset with the praise and approval of millions, while others fade away in shame or under the scorn of millions? What differs is their situation. You know, the context. And this is the key. Situation is everything. For every player, the leash afforded to them, the time they're given to develop, the support systems they have around them, whether it be through coaches, support staff, or even the potential for a second chance. It all matters. And these are the key facts that determine whether a player will be successful and surpass all expectations, or be labeled a bust. Picture this. Envision a quarterback drafted #1 overall after a legendary college career. Drafted to be the missing piece to revitalize a team in desperate need of a savior. After his first season as a starter, he ends up leading the league with 28 interceptions. In today's standards, the writing would have been on the wall. Wait, what's that? His next season, he cuts his turnovers almost in half? And the team makes the playoffs? A few years later, he ends up winning Offensive Player of the Year. The team brings in some fresh blood with a young hotshot coach, and they make it to the playoffs again and again and again. A few years later, they win their first Super Bowl in 35 years. That same quarterback that could have just as easily been written off as a bust would go on to cement himself as a first ballot Hall of Famer and as one of the greatest to ever pick up a football. Now, while very few players have ever been as predetermined to succeed as Peyton Manning, the purpose of this video is not to argue that Ryan Leaf could have had the same career as Peyton Manning, or that Jamarcus Russell could have been a first ballot Hall of Famer if only Lane Kiffin had liked it. My only aim is to draw attention to the fact that far too often, players are written off far too soon, without the same understanding that RT's boys got. How many players today are too quickly written off after a brief stint of subpar results? Some needing an extra step to adjust to the pace of the NFL, or some needing a better fit to adjust to a new scheme or system. How many more could flourish in a better situation that fits their needs, their coaching style, and their development? Show me a player that's drafted into the perfect situation designed specifically for them and a franchise with proven success, and maybe I'll budge. But no player fits every scheme, and every situation is different. Every player can only excel in the context they're given. Look at some of the greatest players of all time, and if it weren't for the right coach, or the right partner in crime, or the right timing, their entire career could have been totally different. Things move on, and it's time for us to progress past antiquated labels like bust. For now, all I can do is warn you that you should stop calling any NFL player a bust, because in the league, there's simply no such thing.